K Padmini is a very important painter who died very young. In fact, she was just about 29 when she died. And in that sense, she reminds us of Shergill, who also had a very short career and died at the age of 28. But unlike Shergill, Padmini is little known, especially outside Kerala. So, showing her in Calcutta would be a very important event. I hope people will notice her work. She was born in 1940 in a remote rural village of Kerala, and where art was not really much known, and her widowed mother was very traditional and didn't understand why this young girl wanted to paint and draw. So she was absolutely against the idea of a daughter turning to art. But luckily for her, her maternal uncle was a little more sympathetic, and he had a friend who was a famous Malayalam poet. He also encouraged her. So these two people, her uncle and the poet called Edasheri Govindan Nair, they really helped her study art even while she was in school. Later, she went to the Madras Art College. At Madras, she studied painting under K.C.S. Panikkar, who is also from Kerala and one of the leading artists of southern India at that point. And she had several now famous artists as her classmates. But she was a very quick learner and she outstripped them in a certain way. She completed a 6-year course. Those days it was 6 years, and in 4 years' time. And she decided that she has to be a professional painter, which was again quite unusual for young girls at that time. So she married one of her classmates, Damodaran, who is also a painter, and she lived hardly for 2 years after that. She died in childbirth, and so she had an extremely short career, hardly 10 years, and including maybe a couple of years before she went to the art college. Because the earliest work, I mean, she hardly dated her works. She didn't even sign them. But we have a painting from 1960 which is dated. So we know that she was actually quite a good painter even before she entered the art college. So in this 10 years, she did a large amount of work. We think maybe more than 200 odd works, and they are of very high quality. So what distinguishes Padmini's work are several things. One, of course, she was a very powerful draftsman, and she drew superbly, a very structured kind of drawing. So her early works are highly drawing centric. They are in oils, but the quality of drawing is very good in those paintings. And this was something that she shared with many artists of her generation in the South. It was highly linear and drawing based. But she had a more realist orientation, not in the sense of painting naturalistically, but trying to capture the world around her in a recognizable and extremely personal way. And later on, of course, as she moved, she started to use colors much more strongly and very bright and strong colors. So we can say that she moved from a drawing based kind of painting, like many of her contemporaries, to a more kind of color based work. But what distinguishes her even more is the kind of emotional quality that these paintings have. And there were, as I said, hardly any women painters at that point of time. But she brings into her work a very kind of strong experience, the desires, the frustrations of an young woman into her work. This is something that we don't see in Indian art for a long while, that kind of powerful subjectivity coming through a person's work. The other factor is that although she uses various devices of modernism, she is completely rooted in her rural setting. Anybody familiar with the village life of Kerala will immediately recognize how rooted she was. This is another important aspect. A modern artist who is, modern in terms of a formal language, and yet able to carry and convey to us her very, very local experiences and do that quite powerfully. So she is a modernist, she is a kind of rare women artist of her time. She was very young, and she is at the same time extremely rooted in her local surroundings. How to translate that local experience into powerful images in painting. Now, when you look at all this, you immediately recognize here was a person who was an extremely promising and bright young artist. Unfortunately, because she died young, she couldn't kind of go beyond a certain age. But what exists, what she did in this 10 years of her career is pretty astounding. And she would stand well against any other senior artist, although these are works that were done when she was still in her 20s.